Almost 1 billion rand to pay student historical debt to universities is seen as controversial by some student organizations like the SASCO, but welcomed by the SAUS, the South African Union of Students. But now we talk to the Deputy Minister for Higher Education and Training, Buti Manamela, on this hot topic. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Manamela. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here.
Some student bodies feel this is very, very controversial.
Well, I don't understand what's controversial about this. We had a discussion with the student leadership, and they basically tabled about 10 items which they wanted to see resolved in our meeting with them and the minister. And this was the one outstanding issue, and the commitment which the minister made at the time when we met with them earlier in February was that she will make an announcement before the end of March, which is this announcement. Now, so I'm not privy to why anybody would say this is controversial, precisely because of the following reason. Firstly, we are covering 52,000 students who are still in the system, who owe universities student fees, who now will have an opportunity to graduate because their fees, their debt with the university would have been paid off. We're also talking about students who are still in the system who, may for one reason or another couldn't pay the university debt, but yet they qualified for NSFAS. And those students, would then have their debt annulled because they were, asked to sign an acknowledgement of debt form, earlier in the year in order for them to be registered. So we think that this is one. Outside of the announcement for fee-free higher education, we think that this is one of the major decisions that has been made because a lot of students themselves, when we went to campuses during the reopening of universities and TVET colleges, one of the issues that were being raised by students, student leaders and all of that, and even university management, was the question of historical debt.
I mean, the big question perhaps would be, where would such a massive amount of money come from?
Well, it comes from the reprioritization that we've done in the department. There were a whole range of other related funding which we believed could be better used by dealing with the question of the historical debt, precisely because students and universities have raised this as one of the crucial points as part of some of the protests that we've seen throughout the whole country in those institutions.
So is the historical debt owed to universities all paid up now? So the point here is that the department looked at how many students are we talking about who owe, who qualified for NSFAS, but who also owed universities, and that's 52,000 students. Now, this is not all debt that's owed to universities. So there are those students who were not qualifying NSFAS students, who could not pass the means test. Those students will still have to pay, what they owe to universities. This is specifically focusing on working class and poor students based on the, criteria that has been set by the NSFAS. And what I also want to emphasize is the fact that we're not doing this for the first time. Sometime in 2016, about 2 billion rands or more was actually allocated to universities in order for universities to clear, the student debt. I think if you recall, during the Fees Must Fall, one of the key issues that was raised by the student movement at the time was the fact that students are being excluded precisely because they owe universities. So this is the second time such a payment is being made. An assessment will obviously be made in terms of the accrual of debt up until 2022 and means and interventions to be made as it relates to student debts of this particular students. What I also want to emphasize, which I think is very, very crucial, is the fact that those students who are owing NSFAS, who who have been in universities prior to this current dispensation, will have to continue to pay, what they owe to NSFAS. We are aware that there are those who have, already paid up some of their debt to to NSFAS, and we really congratulate them for that and thank them for that. But we think those who are still, owing NSFAS, let them continue precisely because some of the money that has been collected is going to help to fund, the fee-free higher education. We think that that is important that we emphasize that. And I think as a result of this announcement made by the minister today, we will see thousands of students now being cleared to, to graduate, and some of those, studying without all these pressures that they are owing universities.
Yeah, fair enough, Buti, but was this a decision taken unilaterally and unanimously by the department? I mean, I'm reading into the level of criticism that the minister has been facing with regards to the lack of consultation, particularly from student bodies like SASCO.
Well, I mean, I think anybody...
Because it took everybody by surprise, seemingly.
Well, I think anybody who can purport to be taken by surprise by this decision are, probably out of touch with what is happening in our universities. Like I said, the minister had an extensive meeting that took place between her and the South African university students, which is representative of all the university SRCs, and through the various platforms where we interact also with the South African Students Congress, this issue was raised as one of the pressing issues. So there's no way that no consultation has been made. And I think what I also want to emphasize is subsequent to that meeting, the minister did engage with with the university vice chancellors and everybody else, and we think that as I said earlier on when we started the interview, this is probably one of the most important decisions after the announcement for fee-free education, because some of the challenges that were confronted in our universities earlier in the year through the protest were exactly as a result of the pressures that students were faced with, with university debt.
I mean, it's obviously an answer to the thousands and possibly millions of South African students out there, but then some of them feel that this is actually a short-term solution to a long-term problem.
But what I'm not hearing is, what is the criticism? What is the problem with the announcement that has been made? What is the problem with the minister saying that we are going to be, relieving debt of students who are currently studying in universities, and we're relieving debt of 52,000 students? What could possibly be the problem with that? And I think, the sooner we hear what the problem is, we'll be able to attend to that. But as far as I'm concerned, the university student leadership has expressed their support to this decision, and we are willing to engage with the national leadership of SASCO as it relates to the details of this decision, and in order to expand on why this is an important decision and why it is also important for them to support this particular and any other student organization.
My understanding of their concern is that such funding should have been used for future funding.
Well,
what do you make of that?
So essentially, if you say that this should have been used for future funding, you are suggesting that those students who are currently in the system, who are unable to afford to repay the university debt, should essentially be excluded. As a former SASCO leader myself, one of the crucial issues that we've been raising in the past has been the question of financial exclusions, where students on their second or third year get excluded irrespective of how they've been performing academically. And we think that this is one of the most important interventions. As it relates to future funding, I must emphasize that government has committed to those who qualify, who falls within the criteria set by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, that those students will be covered. So there shouldn't be any concerns as it relates to future students. Yes, the quantum or the total number of those students may be limited, but we think that it is important that we look at the funding of students' tuition holistically and make appropriate interventions based on what we believe would result in potential outcomes. Earlier on in the month of February, after meeting with the student leadership, the minister committed universities to register those students who are in the second or third year, without requiring them to repay the debt in lieu of this particular decision. And we have done that precisely because our main concern was that there were students who were performing better, and those students were likely to be excluded by universities because they did not have the money to pay. And now, what we're doing with this decision is we're giving those students an opportunity to go and study and complete their degree. Our interest is to see as many students as possible graduating from their universities without financial impediments.
You know, Deputy Minister, ideally, we should all be celebrating, students should be celebrating at this massive, massive achievement, but it's seemingly not the case. I mean, how does the department then deal with such a debt crisis in future? What kind of contingency measures have been put in place by the department, well, including consultation to ensure that this crisis is averted in future?
I must emphasize that there has been extensive consultation on our part with
some of the
student
key stakeholders are saying that no such consultation took place.
The only stakeholder that you're mentioning is the SASCO VETS branch, and as I'm saying is that we're willing to further engage with the SASCO leadership on whatever concerns that they may have as it relates to this particular announcement. As far as I'm concerned, we need to have as many of our organizations embracing this particular decision, because you are talking about potentially 52,000 students who are likely going to be excluded from the universities, or who are likely not to get their qualification precisely because they're all universities. This is a relief to them, and I think that that's important. Secondly, we would really be interested in what are the specific criticism that the student leadership, as you've mentioned, have as it relates to this particular decision. As far as we are concerned, this is quite a historic moment, the question of dealing with the historic debt that students are facing.
Now, 52,000 students will be benefiting from this. What then about those students who are not allowed to go back to universities because they are owing?
As far as we're concerned, there are no students who were allowed not to go to universities. Now, if there are those students who, for the academic year 2019, who were not allowed to, to register with universities, I think let's deal with those specific cases, which is what we've been saying to the student leadership, because sometimes we raise generic issues and you find that it really doesn't affect many students, and it's issues that we can be able to resolve. What we have said earlier in the year, through a statement that the minister has issued, was that all the students who were academically competent, were qualifying to go to the next level, and their results look good, that universities should not stop those students from registering. And those students were required to sign an acknowledgement of debt form. Now, that acknowledgement of debt, as a result of this decision, now falls away. And the National Student Financial Aid Scheme will be working directly with universities to get a list of the students who are affected by this, and to ensure that those students, their debt is cleared. If there are those who were excluded as a result of them owing for the academic year 2018-2019, I urge those students to approach their universities to also get further details from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, so that they are able to be registered, so that they complete their academic programs.
All right, Deputy Minister, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Great.
That was the Deputy Minister for Higher Education, Buti Manamela.